My boyfriend broke up with me when I refused to show his parents my financial records. The harassment got so bad we both filed restraining orders. My world turned upside down yesterday when my boyfriend's parents literally cornered me in my own apartment, screaming in my face and demanding to see my personal financial records. They accused me of being a prostitute and drug dealer. All because I suggested we move to a safer neighborhood and offered to pay more rent. I, 27F, have been with Daniel, 30M, for 3 years, living together for the past 2. When we first started dating, I thought his relationship with his parents was sweet. He grew up in Chicago, had never lived more than 20 minutes from them, and saw them weekly for Sunday dinner. I lost my parents when I was in college, so seeing a close family made me happy for him. But over time, I started noticing things that seemed odd. The first thing that struck me as unusual was the grocery situation. We have a perfectly good grocery store just a block from our apartment. Yet every week, Daniel packs a list, takes a 40-minute bus ride to his parents' neighborhood, and shops with his mother at their local store. When I asked why he didn't just shop nearby, he explained that his mother knew which brands were best and could help him find sales. I thought it was strange but figured it was his time and his choice, so I didn't say anything. Another weird thing was that Daniel shares a credit card account with his parents. They regularly review his purchases and question his spending. Once, they called him to lecture about spending $35 on takeout for our date night, saying it was wasteful. Daniel just accepted this as normal parental concern. Our finances were separate, so I didn't think it affected me directly. Then things started getting weirder. Last summer, Daniel's family invited me on their annual lake house vacation. One evening, Daniel and I were sitting on the dock watching the sunset. A wasp started buzzing around us, and I waved my hands trying to shoo it away. His parents, who were on the porch about 30 feet away, suddenly rushed down to the dock yelling at me. They accused me of hitting their son. I explained about the wasp, which was still buzzing around us. Daniel confirmed my story, but his parents looked at each other with these knowing glances, like they didn't believe either of us. After that weekend, their behavior toward me changed completely. They were cold, suspicious, and watched my every move when I was around them. The situation escalated when I received a promotion at work a few months later. I was excited and told Daniel, who congratulated me. The next day, my supervisor called me into her office, looking uncomfortable. She explained that someone claiming to be my future mother-in-law had called to verify my employment and my recent promotion. I was humiliated and shocked. When I confronted Daniel, he apologized profusely and said his mother was just being thorough because she cared about him. I began avoiding family gatherings after that. Daniel said he understood and didn't pressure me to attend. But his parents started showing up at our apartment unannounced. They would rearrange furniture, clean areas I had already cleaned, and once I caught his mother going through my dresser drawers. I bought locks for my personal belongings, which Daniel thought was an overreaction. Last week, I brought up the idea of moving to a safer neighborhood. Our current area has had several muggings recently, and I don't feel comfortable walking home from the bus stop after dark. Before moving in with Daniel, I lived in a much nicer area, but we chose this apartment because he wanted us to split costs 50-50, and this was what he could afford. I suggested moving to a better neighborhood closer to both our workplaces. I offered to pay 70% of the rent so his contribution would remain the same as what he pays now. Daniel became unusually upset, saying it made him feel like he couldn't pull his weight in our relationship. The next evening, Daniel came home and told me his parents wanted to talk to us. Apparently, he had told them about my offer to pay more rent. According to them, there was no way I could afford to pay that much on my salary unless I had a secret source of income. Daniel said his parents were concerned I might be involved in something illegal or hiding something from him. I was completely baffled by this leap in logic. I explained that I simply earned more than Daniel, had minimal student loans, and was willing to pay more for a safer living situation. Daniel seemed to accept this explanation, but said his parents were still suspicious. Yesterday, Daniel texted me that he wanted to have a serious talk about setting boundaries with his parents. I was relieved and hopeful. When he came home, however, he wasn't alone. His parents were with him. What followed was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. His parents sat down in our living room and demanded to see my bank statements, pay stubs, and tax returns to prove my income was legitimate. His father accused me of trying to isolate Daniel from his family so I could control him. When I refused to show them my personal financial information, they took it as confirmation of guilt. His father got in my face, pointing and yelling about protecting his son. Then his mother brought up a music festival I attended last year with my college roommates. Daniel had declined to go because he hates crowds. His mother accused me of working as a prostitute that weekend. When I pulled up Facebook photos showing I was actually at the festival with friends, she immediately switched to accusing me of selling drugs. Throughout this entire confrontation, I kept looking at Daniel, waiting for him to defend me. At first, he just sat there silent. Then, as his parents got louder, he started nodding along with them. When I pointed out he had never had these suspicions before his parents planted them, he said my defensiveness was making him doubt me too. The whole thing ended with Daniel breaking up with me on the spot. He said he couldn't be with someone who refused to get along with his parents. They helped him pack some essentials, and he left with them, saying he'd come back for the rest of his things later. As they were leaving, his father threatened to report me to the police for domestic violence and drug dealing. Fortunately, after the work verification incident, I had already spoken to HR about his parents' behavior, so there's documentation of their previous interference. I'm in shock. 3 years together, ended because I refused to show my personal financial information to people who have been increasingly hostile toward me. I don't know what to do next, but I know I need to protect myself from their threats and accusations. Has anyone else dealt with something similar? Should I be worried about them following through with their threats to call the police? I have nothing to hide, but I'm afraid of what these people might do. Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone for the supportive comments on my original post. The advice to document everything and contact a lawyer immediately was exactly what I needed to hear. The past 3 weeks have been chaotic. The day after Daniel and his parents left, I contacted a lawyer who specializes in harassment cases. She helped me draft a cease and desist letter to Daniel's parents, warning them that any false reports to the police or my workplace would result in legal action. We also documented all previous incidents of their harassment. 2 days after the confrontation, Daniel came back to collect more of his belongings. He brought his mother with him. I refused to let her in and told Daniel he had 30 minutes to get what he needed. His mother waited in the car, glaring at me through the window the entire time. Daniel was cold but civil. He asked if I would reconsider showing his parents my financial information just to clear the air. I told him that ship had sailed the moment he chose to ambush me with his parents instead of having the boundary conversation he promised. He said I was being stubborn and making everything worse. While Daniel was gathering his things, I noticed him taking items that weren't his, including a coffee maker my sister had given me and some kitchen appliances I had purchased before we lived together. When I pointed this out, he claimed his parents had bought them for us. They hadn't. I had to physically block him from taking my property while he accused me of being materialistic. After he left, I received dozens of text messages from unknown numbers, friends and relatives of Daniel's I had never met, calling me horrible names and accusing me of abusing him. Apparently, his parents had spread their conspiracy theories throughout their entire family network. I blocked each number as they came in. A week after our breakup, I was called into my supervisor's office again. Someone had made an anonymous call claiming I was using company resources to run a side business. Thankfully, my supervisor was understanding and showed me the documentation from our previous conversation about Daniel's parents. The company took no action, but it was humiliating to have to explain the situation to my boss again. The following weekend, I came home to find Daniel's father sitting in a car across the street from my apartment building. He followed me to the entrance, calling my name. I ignored him and went inside, immediately calling my lawyer. She advised me to document the incident and call the police if he showed up again. True to her word, Daniel's mother did file a police report claiming she had witnessed me hitting Daniel during a lake house vacation. The police contacted me, and I explained the situation, providing contact information for my lawyer. I also mentioned the documentation with my HR department regarding the family's pattern of harassment. The officers seemed skeptical of their claims, especially when I explained that the alleged hitting incident involved a wasp on a dock nearly a year ago, with no injuries reported at the time. The most surprising development came when Daniel's cousin Monica reached out to me. Monica and I had met a few times at family events but weren't close. She apologized for what was happening and revealed some family history I hadn't known. According to Monica, Daniel's parents had driven away every girlfriend he'd ever had. His college girlfriend was accused of cheating because she studied late at the library. Another girlfriend was accused of stealing when she borrowed Daniel's sweater. But I had lasted the longest and gotten closer to Daniel than anyone, which Monica believed made his parents escalate their tactics. Monica also told me something that finally made pieces click into place. Daniel's father lost his job 6 years ago due to embezzlement accusations. Though charges were never filed, the scandal forced them to move to a different neighborhood and damaged their social standing. Since then, his parents had become increasingly paranoid about people trying to take advantage of them or Daniel. This explains so much about their behavior, the financial monitoring, the suspicion of my promotion, the immediate leap to assuming criminal activity when I offered to pay more rent. They were projecting their own history onto me. Yesterday, I received an email from Daniel. He apologized for how things ended and said he'd been staying with his parents but planned to get his own place soon. He asked if we could meet to talk about trying again. He claimed he realized his parents were a bit overprotective and he wanted to work on setting better boundaries. I haven't responded. Part of me wants to believe he's genuinely had a realization, but the rest of me remembers how quickly he turned on me when his parents started making accusations. He had promised to talk about boundaries before, only to ambush me with his parents instead. For now, I'm focusing on protecting myself legally and emotionally. I've changed the locks on my apartment, installed a security camera, and documented every interaction with Daniel and his family. My lease ends in 2 months, and I plan to move to that safer neighborhood I wanted, without having to justify my finances to anyone. Has anyone been in a situation where an ex seemed to genuinely recognize toxic family dynamics? Is it ever possible for someone to truly break free from that kind of control? Or am I better off continuing with no contact? Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and things have taken several unexpected turns. After much consideration, I decided to meet with Daniel at a public coffee shop to hear what he had to say. I brought a friend who sat at a nearby table just to be safe. Daniel appeared thin and tired. He apologized again for everything that happened and admitted his parents had issues with boundaries. He told me he had moved into his own apartment the previous week, the first time he lived away from his parents' influence. He had also started seeing a therapist to work through his family dynamics. When I asked why he suddenly decided to make these changes, his answer surprised me. Apparently, after our breakup, his parents' behavior worsened. They insisted on daily check-ins, showed up at his workplace, and demanded to meet any women he spoke to. When he tried to establish some independence, they threatened to cut him off financially. I later discovered they had been supplementing his income for years, which explained why he couldn't afford higher rent despite his job title. The breaking point came when his mother installed a tracking app on his phone without his knowledge. He discovered it when she confronted him about visiting a therapist's office, demanding to know why he was talking to strangers about family matters. While I felt sympathy for Daniel, I maintained that we couldn't resume our relationship. The trust was broken when he sided with his parents despite knowing their accusations were false. He accepted this but asked if we could remain in contact as he worked on his independence. I agreed to limited communication, making it clear that his parents could not be involved in any aspect of my life. He promised to respect this boundary. For a few weeks, things were calm. We exchanged occasional texts, mostly him updating me on his progress with therapy and establishing independence. Then his mother showed up at my new apartment. I was shocked to see her at my door, especially since I had never given Daniel my new address. She was crying, claiming Daniel was making terrible mistakes and needed my help. According to her, he had cut off contact with them and was refusing to answer their calls or texts. She begged me to convince him to reconcile with them. I firmly told her to leave and that I would call the police if she ever came to my home again. After closing the door, I immediately called Daniel. He was equally shocked and apologized profusely. He explained that his parents had hired a private investigator to follow him, which was how they discovered my new address. He had indeed stopped responding to their messages after they showed up at his therapy appointment demanding to speak with his therapist about fixing him. The next day, I received a disturbing email from Daniel's father. It contained personal information about my daily routine, my workplace, and even conversations I'd had with colleagues, details only someone who had been watching me would know. The message implied that if I continued to influence their son, they would make sure I regretted it. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and filed a police report. The officers took the threat seriously, especially given the detailed personal information it contained. They visited Daniel's parents to issue a warning, which apparently only fueled their paranoia. According to Daniel, they now believe there was a grand conspiracy involving me, the police, and Daniel's therapist to keep them from protecting their son. Last week, things escalated further. Daniel's parents showed up at my workplace and made a scene in the lobby, accusing me of manipulating their son and ruining their family. Security escorted them out, and my company has banned them from the premises. My supervisor has been incredibly supportive, but the incident was humiliating and frightening. Daniel came to my apartment that evening, with my permission, visibly shaken. He revealed that after the workplace incident, he had obtained a temporary restraining order against his parents. It was clear their behavior had gone far beyond normal parental concern or even ordinary family dysfunction. While I sympathize with Daniel's situation, I've made it clear that our romantic relationship is over. The trust was broken in ways that can't be repaired. However, I've agreed to be a witness if he needs to extend the restraining order. For now, I'm focused on my own safety and well-being. My lawyer is helping me pursue a restraining order of my own, using the documented pattern of harassment and the threatening email as evidence. I've also informed my building management about the situation and provided photos of Daniel's parents so they can be denied entry. This entire experience has been surreal and exhausting. I never imagined that offering to pay more rent could spiral into restraining orders and threats. While I hope Daniel continues his journey toward independence, I know my own path needs to remain separate from his and his family. Has anyone navigated a successful transition from a romantic relationship to being a supportive friend in a situation like this? Or is complete separation the only safe option? Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I believe this will be my final post about this situation. I want to thank everyone who has followed along and offered support through this bizarre and difficult time. The restraining orders against Daniel's parents were granted for both of us. The evidence of harassment, stalking, and threats was overwhelming. The judge ordered them to stay at least 500 feet away from both of us, our homes, and our workplaces. They were also prohibited from contacting us through any means, including through third parties. For about 2 months, the restraining orders seemed to work. There were no more surprise visits, no threatening emails, and no calls from unknown numbers. I started to feel safe again and was able to focus on rebuilding my life. Then Daniel contacted me with disturbing news. His parents had violated the restraining order by sending letters to his neighbors, claiming he was mentally ill and under my evil influence. They asked his neighbors to report his activities to them and included their phone number. One concerned neighbor showed Daniel the letter instead. The police were involved again, and his parents were given a stern warning. Instead of backing down, they escalated further. They created social media accounts using fake names and began posting false accusations about both of us. They contacted distant relatives and childhood friends, trying to recruit them to rescue Daniel from my supposed manipulation. The turning point came when they showed up at Daniel's workplace, causing such a disruption that security had to remove them and his employer suggested he take time off until the situation was resolved. Daniel lost his job due to the constant drama, despite having documentation about the restraining order. Throughout all of this, Daniel and I maintained limited contact. We weren't trying to rekindle our relationship, but we were each other's witnesses to the bizarre behavior of his parents. We occasionally met for coffee to update each other on legal developments or new violations of the restraining orders. During one of these meetings, Daniel revealed that he had accepted a job offer in Seattle, over 2,000 miles away from Chicago. He had not told his parents or anyone connected to them about the move. He asked if I thought he was making the right decision by moving so far away. I told him that from what I had observed, creating physical distance might be his only chance at a normal life. 3 months ago, Daniel moved to Seattle. He did not tell me exactly when he was leaving or give me his new address, a mutual decision to ensure I couldn't accidentally reveal information to his parents. He sent me a brief email after arriving safely, thanking me for my support and apologizing again for everything that had happened. 2 weeks after Daniel left, his parents resumed their focus on me. They seemed convinced I knew where he was and was hiding this information from them. They were seen driving past my apartment and workplace several times, though they never approached within the 500-foot limit of the restraining order. My lawyer suggested filing for contempt of court due to these new violations, but I was exhausted by the legal battles. Instead, I decided to make a major change of my own. I applied for a transfer to my company's Denver office and was approved. I moved to Denver last month. I didn't announce my departure on social media and asked friends not to post about my move. I changed my phone number and created new email addresses. The only people who know my new address are my sister, my closest friends, and my employer. I even drive a different car now. My sister swapped vehicles with me since Daniel's parents would recognize mine. Before leaving Chicago, I sent a certified letter to Daniel's parents through my lawyer. The letter stated clearly that I had no contact with Daniel, did not know his whereabouts, and was now leaving the city myself. I warned them that any further attempts to contact me would result in additional legal action. We included copies of all previous police reports and restraining order documentation. Since moving to Denver, I've had no signs of being followed or monitored. I'm slowly rebuilding a sense of safety and normalcy. I go hiking on weekends, have joined a local book club, and am focusing on my career advancement. For the first time in nearly a year, I feel like I can breathe freely. Last week, I received a postcard from Seattle. There was no return address, and it simply said, "Found peace at last." Hope you have too. I recognize Daniel's handwriting. I'm glad he's doing well, but I have no intention of resuming contact. Some relationships are simply too damaged by external forces to ever be healthy again. This entire experience taught me how quickly life can spiral out of control due to other people's issues. What started as odd behaviors I overlooked, grocery shopping with his mom, shared credit cards, evolved into stalking, harassment, and threats that forced both of us to relocate to different states. I've learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, to set clear boundaries from the beginning, and to value my safety and peace of mind above all else. I've also learned that you cannot save someone from their own family dynamics, they have to be willing to break free themselves. To everyone who has followed this strange journey, thank you for your support and advice. I'm closing this chapter of my life and looking forward to new beginnings in Denver. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My dad divorced my mom for a younger secretary and my stepmom tries to throw me out of my house. I think my dad forgot that the house is still under my mom's name. I'm a 17-year-old guy, and my life has been turned upside down in the past year. It all started when my dad, who's 45, left my mom, 43, for his 28-year-old secretary. I never saw it coming. My parents always seemed happy together, or at least I thought they were. Growing up, we were a typical middle-class family. Dad worked as a manager at a local manufacturing plant, and mom was a part-time librarian. We lived in a nice house in the suburbs, went on yearly vacations, and generally had a good life. I was an only child, so I got a lot of attention from both my parents. Dad was always the stricter parent, pushing me to excel in school and sports. He had this idea that I needed to be tough to succeed in life. Mom, on the other hand, was more laid back. She encouraged my creative side and always told me to follow my passions. Things started to change about 2 years ago when Dad got a promotion. He began working longer hours and seemed more stressed. That's when he hired Jessica as his personal secretary. At first, I didn't think much of it. Jessica would sometimes come to our house for work-related stuff, and she always seemed nice enough. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. Dad started working late more often. He'd miss my school events, saying he was swamped at work. Mom tried to hide it, but I could see she was worried and upset. There were hushed arguments behind closed doors that would stop as soon as I walked by. Then, about a year ago, Dad dropped the bomb. He sat Mom and me down and announced he was leaving us for Jessica. He said he had fallen in love with her and that they were going to get married. Mom just sat there, silent and pale. I was in shock. I couldn't believe my dad would do this to us. The next few weeks were a blur. Dad moved out, and Mom fell into a deep depression. She barely ate or left her room. I tried my best to take care of her, but I was struggling too. I was angry at Dad, worried about Mom, and scared about what would happen to us. About a month after Dad left, Mom decided to go stay with her parents for a while. She said she needed time to heal and figure things out. I understood, but I felt abandoned. Dad had already left, and now Mom was going too. She asked if I wanted to come with her, but I decided to stay at our house. It was my home, and I didn't want to leave my school and friends. That's when things got really complicated. Dad moved back into the house with Jessica, saying it would be better for me to have a family around. I hated the idea, but I didn't feel like I had much choice. Mom was gone, and I was still a minor. At first, Dad and Jessica tried to act like everything was normal. They'd ask about my day, try to engage me in conversation at dinner. But I wasn't having it. I kept to myself, spent most of my time in my room, and only came out when I had to. Jessica, or should I say my stepmom, God, I hate calling her that, started trying to play house. She'd try to set rules, tell me to do chores, even attempted to ground me once when I came home late. I just ignored her. She wasn't my mom, and I didn't know her anything. As the weeks went by, Jessica got more and more controlling. She complained to Dad about my attitude, my grades, which had slipped because, surprise surprise, I was dealing with a ton of emotional crap, even the way I dressed. Dad, who used to be my biggest defender, just went along with whatever she said. Things came to a head last week. I had a big art project due, and I'd been working on it in the garage. Jessica decided that the garage needed to be cleaned out that very day. When I told her I needed the space for my project, she said my hobby wasn't as important as having a tidy house. I lost it. I yelled at her, telling her she had no right to make decisions about my life or this house. I might have also called her some names I'm not proud of. Dad came home in the middle of this and, instead of listening to my side, he immediately took Jessica's part. He started lecturing me about respect and how I needed to listen to my parents. That's when I really blew up. I told them they weren't my parents, that my real mom was the one they had driven away, and that I hated both of them. Jessica started crying, fake tears, I'm sure, and Dad got really angry. He told me if I couldn't respect their rules, maybe I should go live with my mom. I said fine, I'd rather live in a cardboard box than stay with them. That's when Jessica said, fine, pack your bags. You have until the end of the week to get out. I was stunned. They were actually kicking me out? I'm still in high school, for crying out loud. I locked myself in my room and called Mom, sobbing. That's when she dropped a bombshell on me. The house we're living in? It's not Dad's. It's Mom's. Apparently, it was a gift from my maternal grandparents when Mom and Dad got married. They had put it solely in Mom's name as a way to ensure she'd always have a home, no matter what happened. Mom had never told Dad this, always letting him believe the house was theirs. When they divorced, Mom didn't ask Dad to leave the house because she thought it was important for me to have my father around. She trusted that he'd continue to put me first, even with his new relationship. But now, hearing how they were treating me, she was furious. Mom told me not to worry, that she'd handle everything. She said she'd be home tomorrow and that Dad and Jessica were the ones who'd be leaving, not me. I'm sitting in my room right now, alternating between feeling scared, angry, and weirdly triumphant. I don't know what's going to happen when Mom gets here, but I know it's going to be intense. I'll update when I can. Am I wrong for feeling a bit excited about this? Part of me feels guilty for potentially making Dad and Jessica homeless, but another part feels like they deserve it after how they've treated me and Mom. I don't know what to think anymore. Update 1. Wow, I didn't expect my post to blow up like this. Thank you all for your support and advice. A lot has happened in the last few days, so here's an update. Mom came home the day after I posted. She arrived early in the morning, before Dad and Jessica were awake. We had a long talk where she apologized for leaving me alone to deal with everything. She explained that she had been in a really bad place mentally after the divorce and needed time to heal. She also said she regretted not telling me about the house situation earlier, but she had hoped it wouldn't come to this. When Dad and Jessica came downstairs, they were shocked to see Mom in the kitchen. Dad started to say something, but Mom cut him off. She calmly explained that this was her house, and that she wanted them out by the end of the week. You should have seen their faces. Dad turned pale, and Jessica's jaw practically hit the floor. Dad started sputtering about how this was his house too, that he had paid the mortgage for years. Mom just slid the deed across the table to him. His name wasn't on it. Jessica got angry. She started yelling about how they couldn't just be thrown out, that they had rights. Mom just looked at her and said, "You had no problem throwing my underage son out of his home. At least I'm giving you a week to find a new place." Dad tried to appeal to Mom's emotions, talking about our family history in the house, how it had been our home for so many years. Mom wasn't having it. She said, "It stopped being your home the day you chose her over your family." They argued for a while, with Dad threatening legal action and Jessica alternating between crying and yelling. Mom stood her ground. She had already talked to a lawyer and knew her rights. The house was solely in her name, and Dad had no claim to it. Eventually, Dad and Jessica retreated to their room. We could hear them arguing behind the closed door. Mom and I spent the day catching up and making plans. She's moving back in permanently, and we're going to redecorate the house to make it feel like ours again. The next few days were tense. Dad and Jessica mostly stayed in their room, only coming out to eat or use the bathroom. They tried a few more times to argue with Mom, but she remained firm. I overheard Dad on the phone with a lawyer, who must have told him the same thing Mom did because he seemed even more defeated afterward. On the third day, Jessica left. She took her stuff and went to stay with a friend. She didn't even say goodbye to me, not that I cared. Dad seemed lost after she left. He tried to talk to me a few times, but I wasn't ready to forgive him yet. The day before they were supposed to leave, Dad asked to talk to Mom and me together. He apologized for everything he had done. He admitted that he had handled the divorce terribly and that he had been an awful father to me over the past year. He said he realized now how selfish he had been and how much he had hurt us. Mom listened quietly, then told him that while she appreciated his apology, it didn't undo the damage he had caused. She said he needed to work on himself before he could hope to repair his relationship with me. I didn't say much during this conversation. Part of me wanted to forgive Dad, to have things go back to the way they were. But a bigger part of me was still angry and hurt. I told Dad I needed time and space to process everything. Dad left the next day. It was strange watching him pack up his life into his car. Before he left, he hugged me and told me he loved me. I didn't say it back, but I did hug him. It felt like the end of a chapter in my life. Now it's just Mom and me in the house. We're slowly settling into a new routine. Mom's looking for a job in town so she can move back permanently. I'm catching up on my schoolwork and trying to process everything that's happened. I'm still angry at Dad, but I'm also sad. I miss the relationship we used to have, but I don't know if we can ever get that back. Mom says it'll take time and that it's okay to have mixed feelings about everything. As for Jessica, I heard from a friend that she and Dad broke up. Apparently, she didn't sign up for all this drama. Can't say I'm sad about that. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Thank you all again for your support. It's been a crazy ride, but I'm hopeful that things will get better from here. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and a lot has changed. Some for the better, some. Well, it's complicated. First, the good news. Mom has officially moved back home, and it's been great having her around again. We've been spending a lot of time together, catching up on everything we missed during our time apart. She found a job at a local publishing company, which she's really excited about. It's nice to see her happy again. We've also been redecorating the house. We painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and even started a small vegetable garden in the backyard. It feels like we're reclaiming our space, making new memories to replace the painful ones. My grades have improved now that things have settled down at home. I'm even thinking about college applications, something that seemed impossible a few months ago. Mom's been really supportive, helping me research schools and programs. Now, for the complicated part. Dad's been trying to make amends. He calls regularly and has been asking to see me. At first, I ignored his calls and messages. I was still too angry and hurt to deal with him. But after talking it over with Mom and my therapist, yes, I started seeing one. It's been really helpful. I decided to give him a chance. We met at a cafe last week. It was awkward at first. Neither of us seemed to know what to say. But eventually, we started talking. Dad apologized again for everything that happened. He said he'd been going to therapy too, trying to understand why he did what he did. He told me about his own childhood, things I'd never known before. His father had been abusive, always putting him down and telling him he wasn't good enough. Dad said he'd spent his whole life trying to prove his worth, always chasing the next achievement. When he got the promotion and met Jessica, it was like he saw a chance to be the successful, important man his father always said he couldn't be. He admitted it was no excuse for how he treated Mom and me, but hearing about his past helped me understand him a little better. He seemed genuinely remorseful and said he wanted to try to rebuild our relationship, if I was willing. I told him I needed more time. That while I appreciated his honesty, I wasn't ready to let him back into my life fully yet. He said he understood and that he'd wait until I was ready, no matter how long it took. As for Jessica, turns out their breakup wasn't as final as we thought. They're still in contact, trying to work things out. When Dad told me this, I felt that old anger rising up again. But he assured me that things would be different this time. He said he'd made it clear to Jessica that if they got back together, she needed to respect his relationship with me and Mom. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Part of me thinks Dad deserves a chance at happiness, but another part is worried he'll fall back into old patterns. Mom says it's not our place to judge, that Dad needs to figure things out for himself. She's been surprisingly understanding about the whole thing. There's been an unexpected development with my grandparents, Mom's parents, too. When they heard about everything that happened, they were furious with Dad. But they were also upset with Mom for not telling them how bad things had gotten. Apparently, there had been some tension between Mom and her parents for years, stemming from their overprotectiveness. This whole situation seems to have brought them closer together. Grandma and Grandpa have been visiting more often, helping out around the house and spending time with me. It's nice to have more family around, even if the circumstances that brought us together were less than ideal. As for me, I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are better than others. There are still moments when I get angry thinking about everything that happened. But there are also days when I feel hopeful about the future. I'm learning that family is complicated. People make mistakes, sometimes big ones. And while forgiveness isn't always easy or even possible, understanding can help ease the pain a little. I don't know what the future holds for my family. Will Dad and Jessica work things out? Will I ever fully trust Dad again? Can our family heal from all this? I don't have answers to these questions yet. What I do know is that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I've survived one of the toughest years of my life, and I'm still standing. I have a mom who loves me, grandparents who support me, and even a dad who's trying to make things right. It's not the family I had a year ago, but maybe, just maybe, it can be a good one in its own way. Thank you all for listening to my story and for your support throughout this journey. Your kind words and advice have meant more than you know. I'll update again if there are any major developments, but for now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. Update 3. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed. Life has settled into a new normal, though it's still a work in progress. Mom and I have really found our groove living together. We've established new routines and traditions, like Sunday brunch and movie nights. She's thriving at her new job and has even started dating again. It was weird at first, but I'm happy to see her moving on and finding joy. As for Dad, our relationship has been slowly improving. We've been meeting regularly, usually for lunch or to do something together like playing basketball. These meetings are still sometimes awkward, but they're getting easier. Dad's been consistent in his efforts to rebuild our relationship, which I appreciate. He and Jessica did end up getting back together, which I had mixed feelings about initially. However, true to his word, Dad has maintained boundaries. Jessica doesn't come to our meetings, and Dad doesn't try to force a relationship between us. He says he understands that it's up to me if I ever want to have a relationship with her. I graduated high school a couple of months ago. Both Mom and Dad attended the ceremony. It was tense at first, but they managed to be civil for my sake. Jessica didn't come, which I was relieved about. It wasn't the family picture I had imagined a year ago, but it was okay. I'm heading to college in the fall. I decided on a school that's about 2 hours away, close enough to visit home regularly, but far enough to have my own space. Mom's been amazing, helping me prepare for this new chapter. Dad's been supportive too, offering to help with expenses and move-in day. My relationship with my grandparents has continued to grow stronger. They've become a much bigger part of my life, and I'm grateful for their support and wisdom. They've shared stories about Mom's childhood and their own lives, helping me understand my family history better. As for me, I feel like I've grown a lot through this experience. Therapy has been incredibly helpful in processing my emotions and developing coping strategies. I've learned a lot about forgiveness, not just of others, but of myself too. I've realized it's okay to still feel angry sometimes, and that healing isn't a linear process. I've also learned valuable lessons about communication and setting boundaries. I'm more assertive now about expressing my needs and feelings, which has improved all my relationships. Looking back, I can see how far we've all come. A year ago, I couldn't imagine ever feeling okay again. Now, while things aren't perfect, they're manageable. I've accepted that our family will never be what it once was, but that doesn't mean it can't be good in its own way. As I prepare for college, I feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. I'm looking forward to new experiences and opportunities, but I'm also a bit anxious about leaving the stability Mom and I have built. However, I know I have a strong support system behind me. Dad and I had a heart-to-heart recently where he expressed how proud he was of me for how I've handled everything. He apologized again for putting me through so much pain and promised to continue working on being a better father. It was an emotional conversation, but a needed one. Mom continues to be my rock. She's encouraged me to keep an open mind about my relationship with Dad while also reminding me that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being. Her strength and resilience throughout this whole ordeal have been inspiring. As for the house, it truly feels like home again. The painful memories have been replaced by new, happier ones. Mom and I have talked about what will happen to it when I'm at college. For now, it'll remain our home base, a place I can always return to. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I feel better equipped to handle whatever comes my way. This experience, as painful as it was, has taught me so much about resilience, forgiveness, and the complexities of family dynamics. Thank you all for following my story and for your support throughout this journey. Your kindness and advice have been a source of comfort during some really tough times. As I embark on this new chapter of my life, I carry with me the lessons learned and the strength gained from this experience.